Do you dream of fairies and princesses? Then you've come to the right place. Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePaoli, and in today's House of Mouse headlines, it's time to get ready for the D23 Expo 2019, some new construction and some completed construction at the Disneyland Resort, a surprise smash hit for ABC, and more, so let's get to it.
Hear the latest news from the Walt Disney Company in today's House of Mouse headlines.
First of all, if you're listening to this on the day that it's released, happy Easter. It is Easter Sunday. Perhaps some of you are enjoying it at the Disney parks. And now for some news. It has been announced that the D23 Expo will be returning for the 6th time to the Anaheim Convention Center, August 23rd through 25th of 2019. This is the greatest Disney fan event. If you've never been, I highly suggest that you consider trying to make it to the 2019 D23 Expo. I will certainly be there. Advance tickets go on sale on August 23rd. You can go to d23expo.com to get all the details. They do have some different price levels. If you're a D23 member, they also start charging more for tickets as it gets closer to the event, so the earlier you can buy your tickets, the better. Usually you have through the end of the previous year to get the best discounts, so check that all out at d23expo.com. If you're not familiar with the D23 Expo, it's pretty much Comic-Con for Disney fans. You get tons of panels, including sneak peeks at movies, and in fact, right now, I know they're releasing a lot of stuff for The Incredibles 2 film coming out soon. And it's funny because so much of what they're showing now is stuff that they've already shown at the expo. So if you go to these expos, you get a lot of advanced stuff way before it comes out. And also a lot of announcements. That is where they announced Star Wars Land was going to happen. So it's some pretty major announcements, some pretty far advanced sneak peeks, some pretty spectacular guests, and I'm a particularly huge fan of the D23 Expo. Hope to see you there. As previously announced, Downtown Disney will be having some more upcoming closures because of the new hotel being built at the Disneyland Resort, and it has been confirmed that the following businesses will be going away: Earl of Sandwich, ESPN Zone, AMC, Rainforest Cafe, Alamo Rent-A-Car, Starbucks on the west side, Disney Vacation Club, Walt Disney Travel, and all of this is going to be closing at the latest June 30th, some of them maybe even earlier. Now, this is a huge expansion coming to the Disneyland Resort. It's pretty exciting, but it's going to be a mess for quite some time. I guess we're just going to have to get used to it. I am curious where security is going to go and how we're going to enter Downtown Disney from that end, because it's basically, if you're not familiar, it's all on the side of Downtown Disney that's closest to the Disneyland Hotel and on the other side of the monorail tracks. That's where the new hotel will sit. So I'm not sure where the new entrance will be, but we'll find out soon enough. June 30th is the day that basically these buildings are getting bulldozed, and they may be gone forever. Some of them might return somewhat in the hotel. Me personally, I'm really hoping for an Earl of Sandwich return. Now, we got news of that construction starting at the Disneyland Resort, but we also got news that the Main Street track refurb has been completed at Disneyland Park. I'm very happy about this. It was not fun going to Disneyland and having, construction walls up the entire length of Main Street, USA. It's not pretty. It's annoying to have to get around. I completely understand it has to be done. It's just not a fun thing, and honestly, it made me feel really bad for the folks at Walt Disney World who had to deal with that whole hub construction project that went on for a very, very, very long time. This one went on for only a few months, but basically what they did for the first time since the park opened, they replaced the entire length of the horse-drawn streetcar track, and they even gave it a bit of a different pattern than it was previously. There's more of a figure 8 pattern to it, and they added some brick to it, which makes it look a lot more appealing. It's a similar brick look as you have across the street over at Disney California Adventure. But one of the cool things about this is, since this had never been done before, obviously through the years there had been certain portions of it that had been replaced, but there was a lot of original track still left from the track that Walt Disney laid down, or, his workers laid down. I don't think he was there doing any of the heavy lifting, but they salvaged that, and they're going to preserve that track, any of the original track that was there from day one. So I think that's pretty cool. I don't know where we're going to end up seeing that track, but maybe right in the Opera House off of Town Square at Disneyland. Maybe it'll become part of that little museum in there. I'm not sure, but I think it's great that Archives will be preserving that portion of original Disneyland's track. Now, Joe Rohde was recently at Disneyland, and he posted on Instagram a photo of the castle with a really nice caption that I just want to read to you. This isn't really news, I just thought it was a really lovely sentiment, so I'd like to read it here. If you don't know who Joe Rohde is, he is a mega Imagineer for Walt Disney Imagineering, who's basically was in charge of Disney's Animal Kingdom, as well as Disney's Aulani Resort and Spa in Hawaii, and he does fantastic work. And of course, he was a huge Imagineer for Pandora, the World of Avatar as well. But he wrote on this caption for Instagram, "I'm spending the night at the Disneyland Resort, which gives me an opportunity to meditate upon the nature of our work, because it is nowhere more clear than it is here. Disneyland was created as a place where the young and the old could share experiences and stories equally enchanting to both. But that enchantment is chiefly conveyed through the eyes of children. Our storytelling skills and art design abilities can be appreciated by an adult, but to a child they are invisible. Invisible because they create an entire captivating reality which a child simply believes. And when we, who are old and wary with knowledge, see the belief in the eyes of a child, especially a child we love, we are revived and reminded that there are things worth believing. I don't necessarily mean the fairies and talking animals, but the deeper things. The things those imaginary creatures represent. Like ideas that good will prevail, that magic can occur, that the lost will be found, that justice will prevail, that someone small and insignificant may be the source of something great. There's no denying that these parks are real places, with all the opportunities and inconveniences that real places sometimes present. But they are also transcendent places where, for a second, all the world and all of time and the secret meaning of everything can be encapsulated in the wonder of a child." I thought that was a really lovely caption that he wrote on Instagram. If you want, you can follow Joe Rohde there. It's simply his name, Joerohde. And that leads into our next story, which is about a Tiffin Talks event happening over at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Tiffin's is a restaurant over at Disney's Animal Kingdom, and they have these series I wasn't familiar with actually called Tiffin's Talks, and they're intimate dining experiences that allow guests to enjoy a specialty food and beverages that complement the topics shared by animal and conservation experts. Well, on April 25th of this year, the expert that will be joining them is Joe Rohde, the Imagineer we were just speaking of, and he'll share tales from his adventures all over Asia, India, Nepal, and China, and the chefs of Tiffin's will follow Joe's journeys with a menu inspired by his travels. This is a pretty pricey event. It's $165 per person, but I kind of feel like that's not a terrible price to pay for an evening with Joe Rohde. Another special event going on over at Walt Disney World. Now, this one's for Disney Vacation Club members only, but if you're into wine tasting, they're going to be having a wine tasting event over at Olivia's Cafe at Disney's Old Key West Resort. This will begin on April 15th and will take place on 3 to 4 p.m. on Sundays, and it's $30 per person. I'm not really into wine tasting, but I know people love it, especially here in Southern California. Like, people make weekends of going out for wine tastings. So if you're into that, it sounds like a pretty cool event. Now, as us passionate Disney and Star Wars fans often do, there has been an online petition created about Star Wars Episode 9, which of course is supposedly the final film in the Star Wars saga, and there's been some concern brought up about what they're going to be doing with the character of Princess Leia, considering Carrie Fisher's untimely death. And the fans of Star Wars are saying they want Meryl Streep to take over the role of Princess Leia. Let me read what they wrote. As the fans of Star Wars and Carrie Fisher, we really want Leia to shine in Episode 9, and we certainly do not want her to be written out of the film abruptly without a reasonable plot. Therefore, recasting Leia is a more ideal option for us, and we believe that Meryl Streep is an ideal candidate to play Leia. We strongly believe that she's the best hope for us to see the legacy of Carrie Fisher in Episode 9. May the Force be with Carrie Fisher, Meryl Streep, and Princess Leia. Now, me personally, I'm not a die-hard Star Wars fan, as I've mentioned. I've seen all of the films. I very much enjoy them. But if you've listened to this show for any length of time, you probably know how I feel about character continuity. It's a very important thing to me. I don't like roles to be recast. I don't like it when, character heads are partially changed, but not all of them. I just like character continuity. To me, they are real people, the characters, and they should be treated that way. So obviously, we have a bit of a sticky situation with Carrie Fisher no longer being with us. But here's what I would want to see of the character of Princess Leia. Of course, I'm saying this not knowing anything about the story or script for Episode 9, but If I were in charge, honestly, I would have killed her off in episode 8. But since that didn't happen, what I would say is make the role of Princess Leia a smaller part. Just, don't feature her as much as they, I guess, originally wanted to. I certainly don't want them to change the story drastically, but I would love for them to figure out a way to make Princess Leia a smaller part, perhaps not even seen on screen. Maybe they could get a voice match, which, if they got a very convincing voice match, I'd be all for that, and maybe we would just hear her voice throughout the film, and maybe some shots from the back of the character. And if they needed to do some digital recreation of Princess Leia, I wouldn't be completely against it. I think that the work that they did in episode 8 was pretty darn good for characters that they recreated. So I don't want to see that for an entire movie, but if there were little key moments where they felt that that was necessary, I wouldn't be against it. As far as casting Meryl Streep, I mean, Meryl Streep's a great actress, right? But when I'm going to replace Carrie Fisher, Meryl Streep isn't the first person that comes to mind. I'd kind of prefer a no-name if they are going to replace the actress. So, I don't know, we'll see, but it's an online petition. It could probably go nowhere, but I thought it was a funny little story. Now, I recently learned about a book series called Muppets Meet the Classics, Fairy Tales from Brothers Grimm, where in the classic Muppet fashion, they're taking these classic stories and they're putting their own zany little twist on it. They look like a lot of fun. I haven't read any of them yet, but they do seem to be pretty popular. So I did want to mention something just in case some of you listeners had never heard of this. This is an old thing, like so old that from what I understand, it was only available on VHS. I don't think it ever had a DVD release, but if you like these books, Muppets Meet the Classics, I highly suggest you check out Muppet Classic Theater. It was a VHS tape that I loved and played over and over and over again that I watched a lot as a kid. It's fantastic. So if you've never heard of this, just look into Muppet Classic Theater. Maybe it's available online somewhere. I'm not sure. Or maybe you still have a VHS player and you can find the tape somewhere. I'm sure there's cheap versions of the tape on eBay at the moment. But I just thought I'd mention that. Muppet Classic Theater. And now for some shocking ABC news. Now, if you've been listening recently, you know I'm a huge fan of the sitcom Roseanne. Just a couple episodes ago, we did a Primetime at the Parks segment featuring the episodes where Roseanne went to Walt Disney World on the sitcom. And this past week, the new updated Roseanne, after 20 years of being off the air, has come back. I watched it. I loved it. I laughed out loud a lot. And so did a lot of other people because, shockingly, the premiere got 18.4 million viewers, which is a pretty huge number these days, which just goes on to prove once again, nostalgia is king. Now, I won't get into the details of the episode, but the thing I will say about this is one of the few reboots, and I do like a lot of the reboots, but this is one of the few where I really felt like it was the same show 20 years later and we're just catching up with the Connors. You know, the one that I always think of is Fuller House, which I always tell people, no, it's not good, but it's enjoyable. If you grew up watching Full House, it's an enjoyable show. But I will say Fuller House pokes fun at the original series a lot. Like, they'll poke fun at how cheesy it was and everything. Roseanne doesn't do any of that, and I love that about it. It's simply 20 years later with the same characters and the same cast, giving us that character integrity, although we won't get into the whole Becky situation. But yeah, it was fantastic. Laurie Metcalf, brilliant as ever. And yeah, I highly suggest checking it out if you haven't already. That's going to do it for the news this week. I do want to thank everybody who has left a 5-star review on iTunes. I do see those reviews, but guys, I gotta say, I cannot give you a shout out on the show unless you leave a written review. And that's not just because I'm being stubborn, that's because I don't see your name. When you leave a 5-star review, it is very much appreciated by me, but I don't see who left that. So if you want a shout out on the show, make sure that you leave a written rating along with that 5-star review so that I can give you the shout out that you deserve on Disney Coast to Coast, regardless of whether or not you're leaving just a 5-star review or a 5-star review and a written rating. Thank you so much. It helps other Disney fans find the show more easily. And now for the Twitter poll this week. On last Wednesday's episode, I had my friend Rick West on the show, who recently went to Shanghai Disneyland, so we did a whole trip report about that. But the Twitter poll was, Shanghai Disneyland is full of lands unique to that park. The land that interests me most is... And your options were Mickey Avenue, Gardens of Imagination, Treasure Cove, or Adventure Isle. In last place at 16% of the votes, we had Adventure Isle, followed by Gardens of Imagination at 21% of the votes, and then Mickey Avenue at 26% of the votes, and Treasure Cove at 37% of the votes. So those last three were actually pretty close. We had 21%, 26%, 37%. But I would agree, Treasure Cove is the one that I'd be most interested in because of the Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for the Sunken Treasure attraction. I do want to remind all of you, if you are listening to this on the day that it comes out, today is literally your last day to place the order for your DCTC Newsies hats. Make sure you go to DisneyCoastToCoast.com and do that if you want it. If you're listening to this on Sunday, April 1st, when it is released. I also want to remind you that it's a new month, which means the next e-note that comes out will feature a new music playlist. If you have not signed up for our e-note yet, make sure you go to DisneyCoastToCoast.com, click on Music Playlist there, and you can sign up to get the new music playlist every single month. Of course, all of our social media can be found at DisneyCoastToCoast.com. This episode of Disney Coast to Coast was produced by Philip Elke, who has supported the show through Patreon. If you'd like to become a DCTC producer or gain other rewards, more information can be found at patreon.com/DCTC. Have a magical day, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for watching Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePaoli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com.